One hen, 1 year, 364 eggs out of 365 days. No hormones, no heated barn, no artificial lighting, no supplement bag with a barcode on it. Just a chicken on open pasture doing exactly what she was bred to do. This bird shrugs off freezing winters and brutal summers without flinching, and almost never gets sick. She lives up to a decade, and her eggs carry roughly twice the omega-3s and 3 times the vitamin E of anything sitting under fluorescent lights at a grocery store. Crack one of her eggs into a pan next to a carton from the store, and the difference is obvious before you even taste anything. The yolk sits up tall and firm instead of spreading flat across the pan. The color runs deep orange, sometimes almost red, not the pale yellow people have gotten used to thinking is normal. That color and that texture aren't random. They come directly from a varied forage diet. Bugs, greens, sunlight. Things a caged hen locked under fluorescent light never gets access to. Lab testing on pasture-raised eggs versus conventional ones backs this up again and again. Higher omega-3s, more vitamin E, often more vitamin A and beta-carotene too. It's not a marketing claim, it's a measurable difference in what's actually on the plate. For a brief stretch of history, the whole world knew about this breed. Farmers everywhere were raising her, and families were feeding themselves for almost nothing. Then she disappeared. Not because she stopped producing, and not because some better bird came along. She disappeared because she worked too well, and that made her a threat to a $500 billion industry. By the end of this, you'll know exactly what this bird is, why she got buried, and how to bring her back onto your own land starting this week. Here's what most backyard chicken keepers are dealing with right now. A trip to the feed store, $25 dropped on a 50-pound bag of layer pellets. That bag lasts maybe 3 weeks with a small flock. That's over $400 a year on feed alone. And that's before supplements, grit, oyster shell, electrolytes, dewormer, and whatever else the label says is required. Then there's the birds themselves. Most people start with commercial hybrids from a big box hatchery. Golden Comets, ISA Browns, Production Reds. These birds lay hard for about 18 months, then crash. Egg production can drop 40 to 60% after that first year, and by year 3, most of them are done. So the cycle repeats. More chicks, more feed, more supplies, no end in sight. And if one of those hybrids gets sick, that's a $50 vet visit, antibiotics that cost more than the bird did, and weeks of her eating feed while producing nothing. The average backyard chicken keeper spends somewhere between $800 and $1,200 a year. And most are pulling fewer eggs than their grandmother got from half the birds and 0 store-bought inputs. That's not a farming model. That's a subscription service. Paying monthly fees to corporations for something humans did for free for thousands of years. The frustrating part is, it never had to be this way. There was a bird engineered across generations specifically to break this cycle. Built to feed a family without draining a wallet. Nobody told you about her. And that wasn't an accident. To understand why she matters, rewind to England, 1990. A poultry breeder named William Cook crossed Minorcas, Plymouth Rocks, and Langshans on his small farm. And out came a bird he called the Black Orpington. Good meat, decent eggs, solid temperament, a respectable dual-purpose chicken. But William's real legacy wasn't what he built. It was what happened once his birds crossed the ocean. Australian breeders got hold of those Black Orpingtons in the early 1900s with one goal in mind. Not show ribbons, not fancy feathers, not breed standards for a county fair. Eggs, and more of them, every single day. They crossed in white leghorns for laying consistency, and brought in Rhode Island red genetics to push production higher. Langshan and Minorca blood went in for size and stamina. Then they did something most breeders never bother with. They kept going, generation after generation, season after season, keeping only the hens that laid the most while eating the least. This wasn't a hobby project. This was deliberate, obsessive, multi-generational engineering with a single purpose. A chicken that could feed a family off nothing but open ground. By 1902, The Hawkesbury Agricultural College in New South Wales ran one of the first official egg-laying contests in history. 41 pens of different breeds, same feed, same water, same shelter. The early Australorps took 7 of the top 13 spots, and those breeders still weren't satisfied. They kept pushing. In 1922, at a major laying contest in Geelong, Victoria, a pen of just 6 Australorp hens laid 1,957 eggs across 365 consecutive days. That's 309 eggs per hen, per year, with no artificial lighting, no climate-controlled barn, no hormones, no supplements, no pharmaceutical help of any kind. The poultry world had never seen numbers like that from any breed under any conditions. It didn't stop there. At the next contest, a single hen laid 347 eggs in 12 months, and another bird from those same bloodlines pushed it to 354. And one hen, and in almost nobody talks about this one, laid 364 eggs in 365 days. One egg almost every single day for an entire year. No lab, no special program, just an Australian hen on open pasture with sunlight, bugs from the grass, and kitchen scraps. 5 core bloodlines built this bird: Graham, Burns, Christie, Burlesmere, and Wood Duck. Different breeders, different methods, all chasing the same obsession. A hen that pays for herself from day one and never stops. For a while, the whole world took notice, and that attention brought the wrong kind of eyes. The global poultry industry today is worth north of $320 billion. The feed industry alone adds another $200 billion on top of that. More than $500 billion built on a single assumption: that you need to buy everything to raise anything. So ask the obvious question. What happens to a $200 billion feed industry when a heritage hen walks onto pasture and feeds herself? What happens to veterinary pharmaceutical sales when a naturally hardy breed almost never gets sick? What happens to a company selling patented hybrid chickens when an open-source heritage bird outperforms every product they make on real ground for free? They lose billions, and industries facing that kind of loss don't sit quietly. Here's the problem with the Australorp, from their angle. You can't patent her, and she belongs to no corporation. You can't patent the pasture she forages on, the grass, the bugs, the sunlight. None of it is anyone's intellectual property. You can't patent the knowledge your grandparents carried about raising chickens without buying a single thing. What can't be patented can't be controlled. And what can't be controlled can't generate recurring revenue. And what can't generate recurring revenue gets replaced. So that's exactly what happened. The Australorp got replaced by the Cornish cross, a bird so genetically extreme it hits slaughter weight in 6 weeks. It can't reproduce naturally, and suffers organ failure if it's left alive past 10 weeks. Open pasture got replaced by climate-controlled barns, where chickens never touch real soil or see sunlight in their entire lives. Kitchen scraps and foraged insects got replaced by 50-pound bags of soy corn mix sold at a markup, week after week. Your grandmother's knowledge got replaced by a system requiring you to buy everything from everyone, forever. And it worked. Within 2 generations, most families had never even heard the name Australorp. She fell off hatchery catalogs. Feed stores stopped mentioning her, and agriculture extension programs pushed hybrids instead. The knowledge didn't just fade, it got actively pushed out of the conversation. And the bird that could have kept millions of families food independent got quietly shelved in favor of a system built to keep them dependent. But here's what they didn't count on. She survived anyway. In backyard flocks that never followed the commercial playbook, and in small heritage breeders who kept selecting for the old traits: production, hardiness, foraging ability, self-sufficiency. In homesteaders who never stopped asking the question the industry hoped everyone would forget: why pay for something your great-grandparents got for free? Today, the Livestock Conservancy lists heritage Australorps as a breed worth preserving. Small breeders across the country are actively rebuilding the original production lines, and the results prove what those Australian farmers proved a century ago. The bird still performs. She still lays 250 to 300 eggs a year on good pasture with minimal inputs. She still shrugs off heat and cold with no supplemental heating or cooling, and still raises her own chicks without an incubator. The genetics never failed, the information was just buried, and now it's getting dug back up. So here's how to actually do this. Step 1 is finding a real heritage Australorp, and this is where most people go wrong before they even start. Skip the big commercial hatcheries. Most of them breed for appearance, not production. The birds look the part, but the laying genetics are a shadow of what they used to be. What you actually want is a breeder actively selecting for production, foraging instinct, and hardiness. Someone who tracks their numbers and can tell you what their hens actually lay per year, not what the breed standard claims they should. The Livestock Conservancy keeps breeder directories that are genuinely useful here, and local poultry groups or heritage breed forums are another solid source. Look for breeders who talk about performance, not plumage. A heritage Australorp from a production-focused breeder costs more upfront, but she'll outproduce any hatchery hybrid over a full lifetime by a wide margin. When actually reaching out to a breeder, a handful of questions separate the real production lines from birds that just happen to share the name. Ask how many eggs their hens average per year, and ask if they can show records, not just a guess. Ask whether the flock free ranges or forages on pasture. Because a bird raised entirely in a barn on commercial feed won't show you what she's capable of, even with great genetics underneath her. Ask how long they've been selectively breeding for production traits specifically. 1 or 2 generations of casual breeding isn't the same as decades of deliberate selection. A breeder who hesitates on these questions, or only wants to talk about feather color and comb shape, is breeding for a show table, not a homestead. A breeder who lights up talking about egg counts and foraging behavior is the one worth paying extra for. Give her ground. This isn't a barn bird, she's a forager, built to work open land. Even a small backyard works if she has grass, soil, and insects in real sunlight. A 1/4 acre of decent pasture can support 8 to 12 hens with rotational grazing. And even a 500 square foot run with deep mulch and regular kitchen scrap composting can cut a feed bill by 30%. The key is real ground contact. Bare soil for dust bathing, grass and weeds for grazing, decomposing organic matter that draws insects in. That's her grocery store. Let her shop. Keep her on bare dirt in a static run with no vegetation, and her entire diet comes out of your pocket. Give her ground, and she starts paying for herself. Here's a starting feed mix that costs almost nothing if there's even a small garden in the picture. 60% cracked corn or wheat for energy. 20% protein from black soldier fly larvae, sunflower seeds, or dried mealworms. 10% fresh greens from the garden, kitchen scraps, or foraged weeds like dandelion and clover. And 10% calcium from crushed oyster shell or dried, ground eggshell. That's the entire program. No branded bags, no proprietary blends, no subscription to anyone's supply chain. And the yolk color from a pasture-raised Australorp eating this way isn't subtle. It's deep orange, almost red. That's not cosmetic. That's nutrition visible to the naked eye. Even with the right bird and the right setup, there are mistakes that can undo all of it. Picture a mixed flock a few years back. Golden comets, a couple of Isa browns, some Easter eggers picked up for the colored shells. Feed was running close to $90 a month. Oyster shell and grit bought separately. Electrolytes in summer, vitamins in winter. And every few months, something would get sick. Bumblefoot in one hen. Another that just stopped laying and sat in the nesting box for weeks. 2 birds lost in a single winter to respiratory issues that never got a clear explanation. More money was going into eggs than it would have cost to just buy them at the store. And backyard chickens started looking like a bad bet altogether. Then, an old-timer at a local swap meet handed over a pair of black Australorps, heritage stock from a breeder nobody local had heard of. He didn't say much, just give them ground, stop buying so much, watch what happens. They looked plain, jet black, no blue eggs, no feathered feet, just 2 quiet, solid hens. Within 6 weeks, those 2 birds were outproducing the entire flock of 8. They foraged harder than any chicken around, ate half the feed, and never got sick. Not that winter, not the next summer, not across 3 full years. By the end of that first year, the feed bill had dropped over 60%, egg count went up, and vet costs hit zero. Those two plain black hens became the foundation of everything raised since. That old-timer didn't hand over chickens, he handed over a way out of a system that wasn't even visible as a trap until it was gone. A few mistakes trip up almost everyone trying this. Mistake 1. Buying from the wrong source. Order Australorps from a commercial hatchery, and the bird that shows up looks the part, but lays like a mediocre hybrid. Because those hatcheries breed for volume and appearance, not the production genetics that made this breed legendary in the first place. The breed gets blamed when really it's the source. Find a heritage breeder, tracking laying numbers. That one decision changes everything. Mistake 2. Locking her in a small, static run. The Australorp was built to forage. Lock her in a 4-8 coop with no ground access, and 100% of her feed comes out of pocket while she delivers maybe 60% of her potential. She needs soil, bugs, grass, sunlight, room to actually work. Acreage isn't required, rotational access to fresh ground is. Mistake 3. Overcomplicating the feed. Hearing heritage breed makes people assume some special diet is required. It isn't. Cracked grain, protein scraps, garden greens, calcium, that's the whole list. No need for 5 different supplements or apple cider vinegar in everything. She wasn't built fragile. She was built to thrive on what the land already provides. Mistake 4. Giving up after 1 generation. The first batch might lay around 250 eggs a year, which is solid, but the real power is in selective breeding. Keep the best layers and hatch from the strongest hens. Within 3 to 4 generations, production climbs toward 280, 290, even 300 eggs a year from birds raised entirely for free. The original Australian breeders didn't build a record-setting bird in one season, they built her across decades. A flock like this is a long game, worth playing like one. There's one more piece almost nobody mentions when talking about heritage breeds. Keeping the flock alive long enough to actually see these gains. Hardiness against weather doesn't mean hardiness against predators. And a flock running on open pasture is more exposed than one locked in a barn all day. A secure coop at night matters just as much as good ground during the day. Hardware cloth instead of chicken wire, since chicken wire keeps chickens in, but does almost nothing to keep raccoons, weasels, or hawks out. Buried wire skirting around the coop perimeter stops digging predators before they get close. An automatic door that closes at dusk solves the single most common way backyard flocks get wiped out. Simply forgetting to lock up one night. Winter changes the math too, even for a breed this hardy. The Australorp handles cold far better than most hybrids, thanks to a dense undercoat and a comb low enough to resist frostbite. But foraging slows dramatically once the ground freezes and the bugs disappear. Stored garden greens, dried mealworms, and a bit of extra cracked corn for energy bridge the gap until pasture wakes back up in spring. None of this requires heating the coop, which actually does more harm than good. A heated coop stops birds from acclimating naturally and creates a dangerous temperature swing the moment power ever goes out. Good ventilation paired with deep, dry bedding keeps a flock warm enough through brutal winters without a single watt of electricity. Picture this 3 to 5 years out. A self-sustaining flock of heritage Australorps foraging most of their own food. A feed bill that's a fraction of what it used to be, and 250 to 300 eggs per hen per year from birds that almost never get sick. No more buying chicks, because the hens raise their own. No more replacing burned-out hybrids every 18 months. No more standing in the feed store aisle wondering which $30 bag of supplements is necessary this time. Deep orange, nutrient-dense eggs better than anything money buys anywhere nearby. The kind neighbors and family notice immediately and never want to go back from. That's not just a flock, that's a food system. One that feeds a family without asking permission from a supply chain, a corporation, or a feed company. That's not a hobby, that's independence. Real and tangible, eggs in hand every single morning. And it all traces back to one breed somebody hoped would stay forgotten. So, already raising Australorps? Drop it in the comments either way. What's been the experience? Or what's been holding it back? Every comment gets read. If this opened your eyes to something the industry would rather nobody thought about, subscribe and turn the bell on. Heritage breeds, forgotten methods, real numbers, no fluff, no sponsors dictating the script every single week. This knowledge was never lost, it was just waiting for someone to go looking for it. Now it's out there. What happens next is up to whoever's watching.